Hey, welcome to another Tackle Your Time Tuesday. Today we're going to talk about something that you may have experienced in the spring, that you might be experiencing during Camp Canvas Live, and that almost definitely you will experience in the fall as we move to all virtual learning for our first quarter of school. Mostly though, I want to talk about how you can beat it. So the first thing to know about Zoom fatigue is that it is a real thing. Your brain reacts differently to video meetings than it does to in-person meetings. And that's going to be an unavoidable fact that will impact you, and it's going to impact your students too. And so without further ado, let's get into 4 things you can do to reduce the stress of Zoom meetings on your brain. The first one is to avoid multitasking. I know, especially in a big meeting, it can be very tempting to pay attention to the meeting and also work on another project that needs to be done that takes very little of your attention. However, it's scientifically proven that multitasking is not a real thing, and that what you are doing when you attempt to multitask is minimizing your ability to do either of those tasks well. So avoid continuous partial attention to various tasks and focus on the meeting in front of you. So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2, I'm going to break into 3 parts, but it's all this. Reduce the number of stimuli that you have going on your screen. The first way you can do this in a Zoom meeting is to hide your self-view. It's just a fact that your brain is going to look at yourself a little bit during a meeting. You want to make sure that you look good, but it's something you never have to bother doing in an in-person meeting. And so even though it will feel a little uncomfortable, go ahead and hide your self-view, and then you can worry about just what other people are doing. The next thing you can do to reduce the number of stimuli is to use the speaker view. And that's just one click, and it will allow you to focus on the person who's talking. Our brains are constantly not just listening to words, but attempting to look for social cues and non-verbal communication. If you're trying to look at that in the grid view, you're going to just be taking in so much. So it's going to detract from what matters, which is the person who's speaking. So switching over to speaker view is going to be helpful for your brain. And the third way you can reduce stimuli is normalize that camera off life. I know it's hard, especially when you want to see your students. It helps us to see our students, right? But at the same time, especially when you're sharing a screen, and that's where the focus should be, is on screen sharing, go ahead and be okay with having your camera off, having other people's cameras off. It doesn't mean that they're not paying attention, but it does just take one more piece of stress off your brain. So, number 1 was don't multitask. Number 2 is reduce stimuli. And number 3 and 4 are here on the screen. Number 3, give yourself a break as often as you can. This is a hard thing to do and a hard thing to get used to, but we talked in an earlier episode of Tackle Your Time about the best use of your time being about 25 minutes on and 5 minutes off. That's true for Zoom meetings too. So although you can't always control what's happening in a Zoom meeting, when you are the leader, when it's your class, allowing for that 5-minute break time for yourself and for your students can be really helpful. And 4th and finally, go old school when you can. If your principal wants to talk to you for 10 minutes, it doesn't have to be a video call. You can talk to them on the phone. The same thing is true for social events. If you're trying to catch up with family or friends, it's not necessarily helpful to go from a day of Zoom meetings into a Zoom happy hour. You want to try to remember that it's still okay to communicate over the phone, and just give your eyes and brain a break from that. I got a lot of these tips from a podcast I like called The Productivity Show by Asian Efficiency. So I just wanted to pause briefly and recommend that podcast to you. And that is it for today's Tackle Your Time. I hope that you enjoyed it. I've got some links to more resources about beating Zoom fatigue on the Wakelet at time.itcsforall.com. Thanks for listening.